Hey guys, so in this lesson we're just going to look at graphs, but we're just going to use more real world kind of examples. So for example, here we're going to have a person who's driving a car, here we're going to have a person who's painting, here we're going to have a cell phone contract, someone who's driving again, and then the value of a car becoming less. And then we also have one that has temperature. So here's our first one, okay? So let's just look at what we have on this graph over here. So we've got someone who's busy driving to work, Vuyo, and on the x-axis we've got time, and on the y-axis we've got distance, okay? So for example, after 3 hours, if you look on here, Vuyo has driven 300 kilometers, okay? If you look after 4 hours, Vuyo has driven 400 kilometers. For example, over here and over here, can you see that the distance, look here, after 4 hours, let's read off, if you read off 4 hours, Vuyo has driven 400 kilometers. Then if you read off at 5 hours, it's still 400 kilometers. That was 400 kilometers, and that was 400 kilometers. This means that during this part of a year, Vuyo was not driving because the distance that he has traveled stays the same. So he's not driving over there. Okay, so maybe he stops at a petrol station or someone, maybe he's visiting a friend, but he's not driving over there. Okay, now let's go have a look and see how this all works. So it says, for the first question, how fast is Vuyo driving in the first 4 hours? Okay, so what you do in these questions is you got to go back to the lessons, or you got to remember a lesson where we were looking at rate, and we looked at petrol questions, and we also looked at speed, distance, and time, and I showed you a triangle. It's called the distance, speed, and time triangle. Let's just draw that a little bit better, Kev. There we go. Distance, speed, and time. And I'll quickly remind you how this triangle works. So the D is for distance, S is for speed, T is for time. So for example, if you need to calculate distance, okay? So you see distance is at the top. So then the S and the T are next to each other. So that means multiply. So that's one formula for distance. Now, let's say you wanted to calculate speed. Okay, so speed. Then you'll say speed is equal. And then look at what's at the top. There's a D. And look at what's at the bottom. There's a T. So you'd say D over T. And then if you wanted to calculate time, then, so that would be this one. Then if you look at what's at the top, there's a D. And if you look at what's at the bottom, there's an S. So it'll be D over S. Okay? So those are the different formulas that we know. So it says how fast. So fast means speed. So speed is equal to distance over time. So in the first 4 hours from here to here, how far has Vuyo gone? Well, Vuyo has driven 400 kilometers. So that would be speed is equal to distance over time. So that's going to be 400. And the time from here to here is 4 hours. And so 400 divided by 4 is 100. Now the units of speed will be kilometers per hour. So you see we have kilometers and hours. Okay, so that's the first question. The second one, how fast is Vuyo driving between 4 and 5 hours? Okay, now I did tell you that Vuyo isn't moving over here, but let me try prove it to you. From 4 to 5, look at the distance. It's 400 over here and it's 400 over here. So the total distance that Vuyo drives in that time will be 0 because that distance does not change. Okay, so the total distance goes from 400 to 400, so that's 0. So if you had to use this formula, speed is equal to distance over time, your distance from 4 hours to 5 hours is 0. Some of you might be like, no, but the distance is 400. No, it's not. It was 400 at 4 hours, but it's still 400 at 5 hours. So from here to here, the distance has not changed. So that means 0, okay? And then the time, you could say 1 hour, and that's just going to give you 0. So it's 0 kilometers per hour. And then this next one says, how fast is Vuyo driving from hour 5 to hour 7? So from here to here. So if you look at the distance at hour 5, it's on 400. Okay, and then if you look at the distance over here, well, I'm actually going to change that line. I think there was a bit of a mistake there. I intended it for it to be, let's quickly block this line out. Sorry about that, guys. What I wanted it to do was to go there and there. Okay. like that. Okay, so if we want to use, for question 3 now, if we want to use that same formula, speed is equal to distance over time. Now you have to see how much distance was traveled in that time. So at 5 hours, the distance was 400. Okay, and then at 7 hours, the distance is 600. So from 5 hours to 7 hours, so in that 2 hours, Vuyo traveled 200 kilometers. Does that make sense? Because he was already at 400 kilometers here, and here he's at 600 kilometers. So in that time interval, he only travels 200 kilometers, okay? And the time is 2 hours. And so that would be 100 kilometers per hour. This question says, to hire a painter, okay, so you know, like a painter who comes and paints your house, for example, you must pay a call-out fee for an initial assessment and then a daily fee once the painting job begins. Okay, so do you understand that? Let me explain that. If you have a house, okay, let's say your parents or whatever, you guys want to paint your house, maybe you're gonna call a painter to come have a look at your house, and just to call the painter to come look at the house, you're using their time. Even though they're not painting your house yet, you're still using their time. And so sometimes you're going to have to pay them a call-out fee just so that they come to your house. Maybe you decide you don't want that painter, but you still have to pay a call-out fee. Okay? And then they're going to charge you a daily fee once you start, or once the painting begins. Okay? So the first question says, what is the call-out fee? We'll have a look here. On the x-axis, we have days painted. Now there's 1 day painted, 2 days painted. But what about here? That means there's 0 days painted. But look at the cost. The cost is 200 Rand. How can there be a 200 Rand cost if the person hasn't even painted? Well, that's the call-out fee, you see? So the call-out fee is going to be 200 Rand because the amount of painting is 0, but they're still getting paid 200 Rand. Okay? Okay, the next question says, what is this painter's daily pay rate? Well, the way that you can do this is you could choose any one of these. So for example, let's choose 1 day. Okay? Now, if you go up on the graph to 1 day, and then you look on the side, they get 300 Rand. But that doesn't mean they're earning 300 Rand per day. What that means is, because remember, they already earned a call-out fee of 200 Rand. Okay? So that 300 Rand is broken up into 200 Rand was the call-out fee, and then there's 100 Rand for the painting. And they did that for 1 day. That means this person is earning 100 Rand per day for painting. Now, let's say you chose a different part of the graph. Maybe you chose 5 days worth of painting. Okay, so 5 days worth of painting. This person gets 700 Rand. So let's see that. 700 Rand. But that 700 Rand is broken up into 200 Rand for the call-out fee, and then there's 500 Rand left. But that 500 Rand was for 5 days. So if you divide that by 5, you'll see that they're still earning 100 Rand per day. So that's the painter's daily rate. It's 100 Rand per day. Maybe you can choose another one. Maybe you chose, let's see, maybe you chose this one. Okay, so that's going to be 600 Rand. 600 Rand. But remember that gets broken up into a 200 Rand call-out fee, and then there's 400 Rand left over. But that 400 Rand was earned over 4 days. So if you divide that by 4, it's still going to be 100 Rand per day. Okay, and then this question says, what will a 4-day paint job cost? Well, that's easy. You just go up at 4, go across, 600 Rand. That includes the payout fee, the call-out fee, everything. Okay, 600 Rand. So now it says make a formula for this graph. Okay, so we know that the amount of money that this painter will earn, so the amount of money that the person will make will always be 200 Rand for the call-out fee, plus, now for every hour that the person, for every day that the person paints, they earn 100 Rand. So we could say the number of days multiplied by 100. Okay? Does that make sense? So they get 200 Rand for a call-out fee, plus if they paint for 1 hour, then they get, 1 day, then they get 1 multiplied by 100, which is 100, so they end up getting 300 Rand. If they paint for 2 days, then they earn 2 times 100, which is then 400 altogether, and that's what we said, Okay, and then if they painted for 3 days, well, then they earn the 200 call out fee plus 3 times 100, and so that would be 500, and that's what we've said over there. So this is the formula that you could use. So it'll be 200 plus, or let's say here, total cost is equal to 200, which is the call out fee, plus the number of days that the person paints for multiplied by 100. Okay? Lindelwa takes out a cell phone contract. She must pay a certain amount per month, like a base amount. Okay, I'll explain that now. And then an extra amount per minute when she makes phone calls. Okay, so you know, like if you take out a cell phone contract at Vodacom, Cell C, MTN, all of these places, right? They are going to charge her a certain amount per month. We call this the base amount. And then if she uses the phone for phone calls, then they're going to charge her a little bit more, okay? But even if she doesn't use her phone for phone calls, she still has to pay the base amount just because she has the cell phone. Okay, so on the y-axis here, we've got the cost in rand, and then we've got the number of minutes phoned. So the first question says, what is the contract base amount? We'll have a look at here. You see here she speaks for 5 minutes on the phone. Here she speaks for 10 minutes. But what if she speaks for 0 minutes? Then look, if you go up to the y value, it's 100. So how are they charging her 100 rand if she hasn't even phoned? Well, that's the base amount, okay? So that's how much she has to pay every month, whether she uses the phone or not. Now it says, what is the per minute phone fee? Now, the way that you do this is you could choose any one of these, any one you like, okay? I'm going to choose 10 minutes. So for 10 minutes, she's going to pay 140 rand. So for 10 minutes, she's going to have to pay 140 rand. But remember that that 140 rand is going to be 100 rand is the base amount, and then there's 40 rand left over for the phoning. So to phone for 10 minutes, she has to pay 40 rand. So 40 rand allows her to phone for 10 minutes. So what would 1 minute allow her? Well, how much would 1 minute be? Well, to get 1 minute, you divide this by 10 and you divide this by 10. And 1 minute will then give you 4 rand. So they're charging her 4 rand per minute. Okay? Now you might think, yeah, but Kevin, what if we chose a different value? Okay, maybe you chose 25. Then if you go up 25 and then you go across 200 rand. So 25 minutes is 200 rand. Okay? But remember that from that 200 rand, 100 rand is the base amount, and then there's 100 rand left over. So that 100 rand that's left over allows her to speak for 25 minutes. So what would 1 minute cost? Well, divide by 25, divide by 25, and what you would find is that 1 minute is still going to be 4 rand. So it doesn't matter how you do it, you're going to get to the same value. Okay, so 4 rand per minute. This one says, Lindelwa phones for 20 minutes. What does she pay? Okay, well that's easy. You just go 20 minutes, go up, go across, 180 rand. Okay, now make a formula. So we know that Lindelwa, the total cost is going to be 100 rand every single month, okay? Plus, for every minute that she speaks, so let's say minute, she's going to pay 4 rand. So that would be the formula, okay? So for example, if she speaks for 10 minutes, then let's see if this works. If she speaks for 10 minutes, then that would be 100 plus 10 multiplied by 4, and that would give us 140. So let's see, 10 minutes, it's 140, you see? So make sure that you understand this formula over here. This part here is the number of minutes. 3 more questions, guys. So it says, Todd is driving to work. Okay, so here we can see they've got the speed. So it's not the same as the previous one where we had distance. Now it's speed, okay, and time. So Todd, what is Todd doing between 0 and 5 minutes? Well, here's 0 minutes and here's 5 minutes. Look at what Todd's speed's doing. 10, 20 kilometers per hour, 30 kilometers per hour, 40 kilometers per hour, 50 kilometers per hour, 60 kilometers. So Todd is busy speeding up. Todd is speeding up. Okay, you can see this is not distance, this is speed. Kilometers per hour, and it's speed. Okay, so number 2, what is Todd doing between 5 and 10 minutes? Now, many learners, they would say that Todd is not moving. But that was only true when we looked at this question, where this was distance, and we looked at this part over here. But now, you've got to think about this carefully. What is Todd doing over here? Well, he's driving at 60 kilometers per hour. What is Todd doing over here? Well, he's still driving at 60 kilometers per hour. So he is moving. And what is he doing over there? Well, he's still driving at 60 kilometers per hour. So at this part over here, Todd is driving. He's not standing still, okay? So but we could say that he's driving at a constant speed, of 60 kilometers per hour. Number 3, how far did he drive between 15 and 20 minutes? Now, here's where we need to know our distance, speed, time formulas again, which I showed you earlier. Okay, so I'm not going to go over that in too much detail, but what we want to find is how far. So that means distance. So distance is this one up here. So distance is then equal to, and then you multiply, these two are next to each other, so you multiply them. And then these are next to each other, so that means we multiply, so speed multiplied by time. So let's try to see, between 15 minutes and 20, if you read off his speed, it's 40 kilometers per hour, okay? 40. And the amount of time, well, here you got to be careful. Now, this is where a lot of learners will make mistakes. Can you see that the speed is measured in kilometers per hour? But this is measured in minutes, okay? So this has kilometers per hour, this has minutes. We can't combine them like that. So what you do is you look at between 15 and 20, that's 5 minutes, okay? Now, remember, to go from minutes to hours, you divide by 60. For example, if you have 120 minutes, we know that that would be 2 hours because you're just dividing by 60. So we're going to say 5 divided by 60, not 60 divided by 5. You must say 5 divided by 60, and that'll be 1 over 12. So let's just say 1 over 12 over here. And so if you had to work this out, if you round to 2 decimals, you're going to get 3.33 kilometers. Because if you just left this as 5, you would have said 5 hours. So you would have said 40 times 5, and then that would have meant he's driven 200 kilometers. But he's only driven 3.33 kilometers. So you got to be careful. Okay, and then this last one says, what is Todd doing between 30 and 35 minutes? So 30 and 35 minutes. Well, you can see what's happening over here. This graph is going down, and this graph is speed. So that means his speed is going down. Okay, his speed is going down. So speed is decreasing. 2 more examples. The value of a car becomes less over time. So that is very true. Like if you look at your parents' car or anyone who you know who has a car, that car is becoming less valuable as time goes on. Okay, now, okay, I just want to make sure this graph is actually going through this part over here. Yes, and yes, and yes. Okay, pretend that the line is going perfectly through each of those parts. Okay, so this is Lungile's car. It starts at 120,000 at 0 years. So that's obviously when the car was brand new. And then after the first year, the car is now worth 100,000. After 2 years, the car is worth 80,000. After 3 years, it's worth 60,000. After 4 years, it's worth 40,000. After 5 years, it's worth 20,000. Okay, you understand that it's getting less and less and less. So the first question says, what was the original price of the car? Well, that'll be this one over here, which is 120,000 Rand. See, it's in rands. Next one, how much does the car decrease each year? Well, if you look carefully, it's going from 120,000 to 100,000. Then it goes from 100,000 to 80,000. Then from 80,000 to 60,000. And that's happening each year. So first So after the first year, it's to 100,000. After year number 2, it's 80,000. So can you see that it's going down by 20,000 Rand each year? Because it went from 120 to 100,000. That's 20,000 Rand that it's going down, okay? This question says, what is the car worth after 4 years? So at 4 years, just go up, read the value, and that'll be 40,000 Rand. Okay, this one says, make a formula. Okay, so the value of her car, so we can say that the value equals, so it starts at 120,000, okay, and then each year, it goes down by 20,000. So we can say minus 20,000 multiplied by however many years it's however old it is. For example, if the car is 1 year old, then you would say 120,000 minus 20,000 times 1, because you're only minusing 120,000, okay? And so that's going to give you 100,000, which is what we see. Now, if it was 3 years old, then you would say 120,000 minus 20,000 multiplied by 3, because you're minusing 20,000 3 times, and that would give us 60,000, and that's exactly what the graph says. At 3 years, it must be worth 60,000. Okay, so this part here for the y just stands for number of years. Okay, so maybe we just put years like that. Okay. Last question. Well done if you've made it this far. This one will be pretty straightforward. It says the graph below shows the temperatures in Cape Town in October of 2023. First question says, what was the maximum temperature and on which day? Well, we can see the maximum temperature here is 29, and that was on a Friday. So 29 degrees on Friday. This one says, between which 2 days was the greatest change in temperature recorded? Well, on Wednesday, it was 23. On Thursday, it was 26. So how much did it change by? Well, it went up by 3 degrees. Okay. Then, for example, on Thursday, it was 26. And on Friday, it was 29. So that only went up by 3 degrees. On Friday, it was 29. And on Saturday, it was 25. Ooh, so now it went down by 4. So it changes by 4. So that's going to be the answer. Between Friday and Saturday, that was where the largest change in temperature. Because from here to here, it only changes by 3. From here to here, it only changes by 3. And from here to here, it changes by 4. From here to here, from Saturday to Sunday, it just goes from 25 to 26. So it only changes by 1. So it will be between Friday and Saturday.